For more now, I'm joined by Mollie Saltskog. She's senior intelligence analyst at the Soufan Group. Mollie, it's great to have you. What's the expectation now? We've seen some of these cyber attacks in Ukraine already today.
Thanks for having me, Kelly. Yeah, the cyber attacks and, as you mentioned, the utilization of disinformation campaigns by Russia are all part of what is commonly referred to as phase zero of any type of invasion from Russia. And it's really laying the groundwork for that to be followed by any military or kinetic action.
So if that's phase zero, then how many phases are there and what does the next one look like?
Well, as we heard from the previous reporting, that there has now been sanctions imposed by the Biden administration in close coordination with our Western allies in the UK and the European Union, and now seeing whether Putin will escalate or de-escalate. The Biden administration made it very clear that this is just the beginning. And I think an important point to note here is that these sanctions were closely coordinated with our allies. And this is showing Western resolve and Western coordination and commitment to deterring Russia, to raise the cost for Russia with these sanctions. And this is not only closely watched by Russia and Moscow and the Kremlin and Mr. Putin himself, but also other strategic adversaries like China.
Sure. The Department of Defense just had a briefing with reporters. Senior defense officials said Russia is as ready as they can be. They have 80% in forward positions ready to go. They are literally ready to go now. They have brought in nearly 100% of all the forces we anticipated he would need for a large-scale invasion, 10 landing ships in the Black Sea with troops on board, everything ready for a large-scale invasion. And the belief continues to be that that is his goal. So it doesn't sound like sanctions are doing much to deter the next step here.
Well, the Biden administration have been strategic and smart in that they didn't go full out on all the sanction options available, but they're slowly raising the cost. Now, again, we can evaluate the effectiveness of sanctions, but the point is that this will be costly for Russia in the long term. But also, I think it's very important, Kelly, to note that actually there are repercussions for these sanctions on a Western market, too.
Sure.
There will be long-term economic effects that may impact Western companies, but also in the short term, both the UK and the US have gone out and said that private sector companies in the West may be increasingly targeted by cyber attacks. So this is the moment where Western private companies and private sector should really ready their cyber defense capabilities against Russian attacks. And that is very important to note.
Absolutely critical, like to your point. I guess just a final question on Nord Stream 2. How vital is that pipeline to Russia? And do you think that it is, at this point, a non-starter?
Well, Nord Stream 2 has been a contentious point in rallying European allies, specifically Germany, to deter Russia. And it was heartening to see that the chancellor of Germany put it on hold and, said this is not happening. Now, that pushes China closer to its dependence on China. And this is where we're seeing, the long-term effects of the conflict in eastern Ukraine, in Eastern Europe, and Ukraine specifically, is going to have ripple effects in other strategic competitions that the U.S. has with, for example, China. So the reliance on exporting natural gas to Europe has now been shifted into this massive gas deal that was signed between China and Russia on the sidelines of the Olympics.
Great point. And again, just underscores the different relationships involved here as we move through the phases you've outlined. Mollie, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Mollie Saltskog with the Soufan Group.